Sometimes a election worker makes a mistake and gives a voter the wrong ballot. Typically what happens is those come back at night with the information. They're not in the blue bin of voted ballots that come out of the tabulator. They're given to us at check-in. They let us know that they're uncounted ballots. So we have categories like uncounted ballots and returned blank ballots. So we send out a stack of blank full-page paper ballots, and those that aren't used are returned in a bag. Likewise, we'll get these few uncounted ballots, typically from a handful of sites. So this is not atypical. What is atypical in this situation is that they did not give it back to us in the correct location at the correct time, so we located them when we were working through provisionals. Since we had already made the totals and it was past the time to add those, I'm bringing them to you for two reasons. Number one, for transparency, because the totals will change if they're accepted. And number two, because on looks like up to 24 of these, the voter may have been given the wrong ballot. If the voter was given the wrong ballot, they would potentially have voted for contests in which they were not eligible. So the recommendation is for you to authorize me to count those contests for which the voter would be eligible. But that's the reason why I'm bringing them to you. Again, it's not atypical to see these come in that have not read, but the two things that are atypical are one, that they were not located until well after the day after the election, and two, that we do know that there are a good handful that may have been the wrong ballot. Is that helpful?
I think all the commissioners might have another question.
Okay.
To start out, these are the sheets that come out of the machine that we vote on. Is that what you're telling us?
There are both the espresso ballot cards that are printed and full page ballots.
Okay, spread, how many of those came out of the machine?
I would have to count them. There's a total of 25.
25 came out of the machine?
No, there's a total of 25. I don't have the breakdown of the type because some of them are in sealed bags.
Okay, the ones that came out of the machine, I experienced this one time and it would not read mine. So they voided that one document that I had and gave me another one. I revoted and it read, counted. So is that the normal procedure, or what is normal
Yes,
procedure?
that is what the board worker should have done, which is why we call this a board worker error.
Okay. Now, the ones that, what are the other ones? Are those provisional ballots, or are they the actual ballot for that precinct, or what are these other ones that you're talking about?
So again, it could have been one that they printed the wrong ballot style for the individual or for the location, and it didn't read through the machine.
Okay. It didn't read in the machine here?
Didn't read in the machine there. We didn't read it in the machine here because we didn't locate it until we were going through provisionals, which was past the time where we would have normally worked through those.
Okay. When we're out there, you've got ballot printers also.
In some locations,
In
correct.
some locations. Was this a ballot printer, or was this a ballot that
It,
you'd already pre-printed?
it would have been a ballot printer.
Okay. And that pre-printed ballot, what's the process? Once you get that and they vote on it, what happens to that pre-printed ballot next?
They should, if it is not a provisional ballot, if someone has just requested a paper full-page ballot, they print it and they should take it to the tabulation equipment and run it.
So it gets read right away. But
It should.
They did not do that.
They did, and it didn't read, and instead of issuing a new one, they packed it up as an unvoted ballot that wouldn't read.
Okay. So every one of these could have been corrected as a polling site. It's just now it's to our position to decide whether or not to count them.
That's correct.
Okay. Of these 25, are you able to identify who the voter was?
No.
Okay. That's good. I like that answer. Okay. We'll go down the line. Commissioner Cruz, you have a question?
Yeah, so how do you know that a voter didn't vote twice if you can't identify the voter?
Okay, because they only check in once.
Okay, so they could, but could they have put a provisional ballot at a different place? Could they have come down here?
No, so
I know, just keep it, I'll just scream, I'll just be real loud.
no, so the voter would check in, they would have gotten the ballot, and that doesn't once they check in, they're checked in. So they move over, and whether or not the ballot that they get goes in the tabulator, they've already checked in, so they couldn't check in anywhere else.
Okay, so they couldn't have been sent an advance ballot either. I just want to make sure that they're not voting twice.
So people could be sent an advance ballot and show up to vote, but if they are sent an advance ballot and then show up to vote, they're checked in provisionally. Yeah.
Okay.
And we've got some of those categories for you as well.
Okay.
Commissioner Howell.
Want to use the microphone?
Sure, if you'd like.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Let's make sure I can be heard. So when Commissioner Dennis described the situation, he actually had an unreadable ballot, but it was for the correct ballot. You had the correct ballot, just it wasn't unreadable for some reason. And you mentioned a minute ago, these ballots might have to be partially counted. How do you know how to partially count them if you don't know what precinct or what was the proper ballot for these particular voters?
So what we would ask you to consider is if the ballot that the voter got at the polling location, which we have because they're separated by polling location, was a ballot for that polling location, then we would assume that that was the correct ballot. If the ballot was not a ballot for that polling location, then it would not have been the correct ballot, and we would intend for you to look at counting the contests for which the voter would have been eligible to vote. So things like the statewide contests.
One more question.
Sure.
Okay, so, let me take the microphone. It's a long story, I'm sorry. And you know this story. One of the poll workers, a gentleman came in to vote, and he was told that he'd already received a mail ballot, which he did not know. He was on the permanent disabled list, and he was sent a ballot, but he never received it. So he showed up at poll site to vote, and they checked him in. They said, we've already sent you a ballot, which he never received. But that's another story. So they went ahead and did the ballot on demand printer, printed him the ballot, and they printed the wrong ballot. He never tried to put that into a scanner or a DS200 because he had to vote provisional. But you're telling me that if he had tried to, if he would have been allowed to vote a normal process at that particular moment, that tabulator would not have accepted that ballot because it wasn't expecting a ballot out of the wrong part of the county. It would have rejected it at that moment, right? He should have received a Riverside ballot. He ended up receiving a City of Wichita ballot for a different for a different part of the county. So had they tried to scan that in to that tabulator, it would have rejected it because it wasn't expecting something outside of a certain number of ballot styles.
On election day, that is correct.
On election day.
Yes.
So, just as a matter of training, I think that we have an opportunity to make sure that when we do ballot on demand ballots, I suspect most of this is that these are fairly new to Sedgwick County. The RI, I'll just tell you this, the RI-07 looks just like 107. And that's exactly what happened. So they printed 107, they should have printed RI-07, and it's completely different people on those ballots. So they were able to print the wrong ballot. But that would have caused this very same problem had they tried to scan that in. In his case, he was doing provisional, so we got caught. And he called me, but I can see how this would happen. So we have a significant opportunity for training to make sure you don't print the wrong ballot. Again, so it sounds like this may be a common problem.
And Commissioner, that was in early voting too, correct?
It wasn't early voting. Again, that's even more concerning. So again, had he approached the DS200 tabulator, it would have been accepted in this case. But on election day, it would not have been accepted.
Correct.
Because, okay. So again, it's nice the machines work that way, but I do think that this is an opportunity where they're printing the wrong ballot for some reason. I think it's an opportunity for training to make sure that when you print out a ballot, you better really verify they've got the correct ballot, because it's easy to print the incorrect ballot and hand it to the voter by accident, whereas the express vote machines, that can't happen. You scan a receipt, and it actually brings up your ballot by reading a barcode. That can't happen there. On the express vote, you scan a receipt that brings up your ballot.
Correct.
So that's unlikely to happen there. But when someone goes to a ballot on demand printer, they can in fact print the wrong ballot. So we need to work on processes in that area.
Agreed.
Okay. I got it right so far? Sounds right?
Yes.
I guess I would speculate out of those 25, I'll bet all 25 of those are the traditional ballots where you fill in the bubbles, and none of those are on express vote machines. I'm going to speculate. I'd like to have that confirmed.
Thank you. I know at least one was express vote that has that had a streak or a mark through miss it, like a scratch through the code.
But you can see why it happened in that case.
Okay. One more question that came up in my mind after you started explaining is, you said that some of these we're not going to count. You indicated that some of them were for a different precinct that you gave them a ballot for, so you're not going to fully count that ballot. How are we able to identify when there's no identifying marks of that voter? How are you going to tell whether or not that they were the right precinct or the wrong precinct?
Thanks. So again, these are election day, so there are only specific precincts at the precinct ballots at the polling site. If the precinct ballot that is in the container for that polling site doesn't match a precinct ballot that should have been at that polling site, then we will know that it was not the correct ballot for the polling site.
You got that? I'm giving you a blank look because I still don't understand.
Right. On early voting, every voter can go to any poll site on early voting. And those tabulators will accept the ballot from anywhere in Sedgwick County. But on election day, a poll site only has about 10 precincts. That is, maybe only 5 or 6 precincts associated with that particular poll site. So if you print the wrong ballot out of the ballot on demand printer, and you try to put that into a DS200 tabulator, it won't accept it because it's not from one of those 5 or 6 precincts. It's from someplace else in the county. It says, I can't accept you because it's not one of the 5 or 6 I'm expecting. So that's one. So again, on election day, it's limited to a few precincts, whereas on early voting, it's into all precincts.
The ballot that they have in their hand that you gave them, which is not for that precinct. We can't identify the individual, so how do you know what precinct that you're going to count different voters for?
She's talking statewide. You're talking a statewide.
You're only going to
is what-
take the statewide off all of
The
them.
recommendation would be for you to consider what you would authorize, and I would look at potentially the statewide races, a race in which each voter would have been qualified to vote for.
But there's judges, there are commissioners, there's a whole number of other people that aren't statewide, so none of those are going to get counted.
Out of the 25 of these, no, right? Is that what you're asking?
If you authorize,
25 votes.
if you authorize me to count those partially, that would be a suggestion of how to do it.
Well,
Again,
I would think you'd want to count the county votes because they're countywide.
Countywide and statewide would have to be counted because they're the same on every ballot in Sedgwick County.
sure,
Anything that's less than a countywide or statewide ballot question would have to be, again, if it's different from different places in the county, it would have to not be counted because, and the guy that called me, he had to vote for one of the other commissioners. He had the wrong commission race, which is why he called me. He was upset. So then, in that particular case, had that one not been cured or fixed, we would not count that commission race because he had the wrong ballot for what he was supposed to get. So anything that's statewide or countywide, that means judges, Secretary of State, Treasurer, AG, Governor, all those should count because every ballot has the same on every one of those races. For Republicans and Democrats.
that is how I looked at it. Again, that's why I brought it to the canvas. It's problematic when I looked at it. It's not a decision for me to make, it's a decision for you to make, and that's why it's before you to make.
Okay, so I think that the consensus after listening to everything thank you. It appears that the consensus is to count statewide and countywide elections for Democrat, Republicans, and there could be some independents in here too, because this ballot was open for independents.
Right. Value both of them would be.
Yeah. So I would count all Republican, Democrat, and independent voters, but not any races that were below those levels for state or countywide. I make that motion.
I think the second explanation.
Second with the next question.
I will second that motion, but my explanation of vote is this: these are not provisional voters. These are voters that have a right to vote. And on those races, they have a right to vote on those races. And their votes need to count. So I think on that regard, I would want to count this, but I do think we have an opportunity to tighten this issue up significantly. So I will second the motion.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We went through one.
Thank you, sorry about that. Okay, so the next category is advance, where an individual was mailed a ballot, and then they appeared and voted at the polls. They appeared and voted provisionally and did not return their advance mail ballot. So we mailed a ballot, the individual went to the polls, they voted, we came provisionally, we checked, and we never returned or counted a mail ballot for them. So that's one ballot cast for the individual, was 576 of those.
Okay, and all 576 of those should count because they only voted one time, even though they had an advance ballot sent to them. Okay, move to vote to count the 576 advance ballots. Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Now, next year, a whole lot of people went to the wrong polling place.
A whole lot of people went to the wrong polling place, you're correct. 2,468 went to the wrong polling place. They were given the opportunity to go to their assigned polling place, but chose to stay and vote provisionally.
In these cases, we're only going to count those that were statewide or countywide, correct? And the amendment.
So those would be only, yeah,